Hi, and welcome back to my channel. Today, do-it-yourself pumpkin light with LED lights, stained glass style. Now it's just in time for the fall and Halloween season. So I'm using 18 gauge copper wire and I'm making little coils to use in my pumpkin design. Now I have a pre-existing frame that a friend gave me that I am using to build off of. Now you can go to your favorite store or your friends, or go to a Goodwill or some other used craft or goods store and buy things to decorate. So I am using that wire and making lots and lots of coils, as you can see, of different sizes, different shapes, and I'm just going to pick and choose as I go. So I have my frame that I have foiled because, as you know from my other videos, whenever you buy metal objects, most of the time the metal will not accept solder. Now, of course, you can try to solder onto the metal before you start to foil everything. I just haven't had any luck with that, so I have had to foil everything. I did add some wire, as you can see, toward the bottom of the screen. I did order some 14 gauge wire and then wrap that around the top and toward the bottom of my pumpkin, kind of in little arches as I went. And I did this to try to give it a little bit more of a pumpkin shape. And then I'm trying to mimic that little arch between each rib of the pumpkin with my curly Q wire. Now I'm going to end up tinning all of these coils. Now you could, of course, buy wire that's already pre-tinned, and then the patina or whatever finish you want to put on your design would end up all accepting the patina all the same between where you solder and where you don't solder. So you could have done that. What I wanted with most of my projects like this, where I had like little curly cues that I'm adding, I like to have the clumpiness of the uneven wire with the solder on it. Whereas if you want the really smooth, clean line of the wire, which is, very perfect, then you would probably want to start off with tinned wire so that you don't have the clumpiness that you might get when you solder. I'm also trying to add like little areas where the wire coils are soldered together and they're not like individually perfect spirals. So if the spirals, this coil spirals, whatever you want to call them, if they got close together, then I want to add some solder. I also wanted to add a little bit of solder in the middle of each of the loops when they're done, so that there's like a little circle, and the circle in the middle is filled. Now to fill these pieces, these little circles, you're going to probably have a little tough time to try to get the little glob of solder to adhere just to the middle of the circle without heating up the wire so much that it falls to your work surface. So to avoid that, what you need to do is let the coil cool down quite a lot and almost drop the solder onto the coil, and don't try to do it all at once. As you can see, sometimes it's kind of tricky to add a piece of design to your project, and you're going to want to don't now heat the other side immediately, because the wire heats up really, really fast. So you want to do one area at a time and then come back and do the next part, because if you heat it up too much, it's just going to fall. And, just like if you have a small piece of glass and you're trying to attach it, if you heat it up too much, the whole glass or the foil itself might unstick. There's a lot of ways that heat will just make your design fall apart. I usually like to go from one area to another to make it all look similar and work. So I'm adding some solder as I go. As you can see, that's where I looped wire from one area to another. When I'm doing a project like this and I have a whole pile of little coils that I made ahead of time, I like to start with the largest coils first and kind of interspace them kind of evenly between one area and another, and then fill them in with smaller coils. And you may run out of one particular size and have to go back to your workstation and make more. That happens. The reason I do that is I don't want to do one area and then change my mind on how filled I want a certain shape to be, and then have one area done one way, and then now I have to go back and either take them out or change my mind. So that's why I will attach large ones first and then come back and fill in spaces. You can see I'm wearing a silicone glove on my left hand there, and the silicone gloves are nice because things don't stick to them. You can wash them and use them again and again and again. That's why it's turning very yellow, because I've used it a lot of times, and it helps dissipate the heat somewhat so you don't burn your hands if you happen to hold the wire a little bit too long and it heats up. Guess I'm wearing a silicone glove on both hands at this time. Sometimes I just wear the silicone glove on my left hand. I'm bending the coil so it has that arch shape like I want for each area of the pumpkin, so it has kind of a pumpkin shape to it. So I will like attach one side and then attach, bend the wire, and if needed, and attach the other side. Now, because I spent some time trying to fiddle around with the other side, the side that I did solder is attached enough that it will allow me to heat up the left side and do some work on it without it popping out. I mean, still it does sometimes pop out and I have to put it back on. I'm trying to make my coils from one area to another also like go different directions, because I don't want like all of them being right hand coils and then have it like really like a pattern. This kind of project, I don't want a pattern. I want a kind of loose, irregular look to it. Now you notice that the middle little coil at the top of the pumpkin is not, I did not patina that. When I'm done, I ended up using a copper patina on this project, and I figured that if it didn't look good, I was going to paint anything that was black, because it was a black metal to begin with, patina like a coppery color if it didn't look good. But I thought it looked great having it with the black top and bottom. Didn't bother me, so I didn't end up having to paint it. Here's a shot of what it was looking like when I had added all my little coils, and even the centers, you can see I filled them in, and then I washed it. Right now I am adding my little leaves that I bought. So I bought these glass little, like, I think they were called petals, and I got them in different colors, but I'm actually only going to be using the pink ones and the red ones in this project. Now I foiled each piece of glass with only a quarter of the width of the 7/32 inch foil that I like to use. So it's black backed copper foil. And I smoothed them over and foiled each little glass bead petal guy. And now I'm using 28 gauge copper wire to kind of sew or thread these little leaves on. And yeah, they're kind of pesky, and you're kind of like sewing them around and around where you want to put them. I want these little petals to be free. I'm not going to solder them all the way down. They're only going to be soldered basically where I am wiring them on. I want them kind of free flowing and sticking up in the air. Now, if I soldered them down to the copper coils, and then had gaps between where, if I soldered each side of these petals, I would then have the problem of any patina not being able to get at the stuff underneath. You can see that's why I wrapped and wrapped and wrapped one. So I have a whole bunch of petals that I have threaded on, and now I need to hold them in place before I solder them. This was a little bit of a drag because they didn't really want to stay where I wanted them to at times. Sometimes if I held them up with tweezers, then that worked nicely. I then at times had to put like pieces of my plastic fid underneath them to hold them in the air properly. I did not put solder around all the leaves. I decided I'm going to use copper patina, and the copper color of the foil going around each of these leaves or petals is going to be close enough in color when I'm done to blend with the copper patina. Now I could have foiled around each particular petal. If I did that, of course I would have had the danger of the foil actually coming off the petals, because the foil is so thin. It's just a quarter of the width, as I said, of normal 7/32 inch copper foil. So it's like really, really small. It's like just a couple millimeters. So if that, I mean, it's really thin. So, you know, it would have come off at times. So I just wanted to have these petals to be kind of in the air a little bit and just soldered at where I kind of sewed them on. So you can see right there I'm using a black plastic fid that I usually use these fids to hold down to kind of burnish the foil into my glass, but they're also handy to kind of push things up when you're working, etc. So I'm soldering the wire that I use to sew it together. I'm going to be soldering them in place all over. So I have like little leafy things or leafy petal things all over the place on my project. And I kind of didn't want them to overlap each other. They're all just kind of going off in different angles. I'm just using the pink and the red, as I said, and I just kind of did them kind of irregularly all over the place. And that's what it looks like. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.